Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is JUKEBOX and welcome to Command Conquer Remastered. This is a title by Petroglyph Studios, the team behind Grey Goo and 8-Bit Armies, in assistance with Westwood Studios employees and Frank Klepacki to bring back this 95 and the 96 classic Tiberian Dawn, which you see here on screen, and Red Alert, as well as their expansions Covert Ops, Counter-Strike, and The Aftermath. Now, my first experience with the game is the PlayStation 1 version of Command & Conquer Tiberian Dawn, when it was just called Command & Conquer, as shown here. And essentially, they've brought back all the cutscenes from that game and thrown it into here, which is awesome. However, there are some issues with the cutscenes, with them being AI upscaled and them upscaling the frame rate from 15 FPS, which PlayStation 1 only had for 15 FPS cutscenes, no matter what game you played. That was the limit. And they're stretching that out to either 30 or 60. I'm going to say 60 because it looks real bad, and we'll get into it as we go along. However, there are timestamps down below, so if you want to look at the specific section of this First Impressions, an overview of Command & Conquer, please feel free to do so. But the first section we're going to look at is the options menu, as this is always the most important before jumping into a video game. The general consensus here is that it's relatively good. We have choices between Legacy and Modern, with my only complaint being we don't have middle mouse wheel click scrolling. We only have right click scrolling. So really the only way you can do this is if you do left mouse clicking to attack and move, and then right mouse for the scrolling around the map. Otherwise, you're going to run into some issues where you're trying to tell your troops to move, but you hold down the mouse button for like slightly too long, and you'll start scrolling around the map. Everything else though, resource capacity, showing our harvesters if they have enough Tiberian to go back to our base, or if you're Red Alert guys. And then unit queuing, which is really nice, so we can queue up as many units as we'd like. This is also a feature in OpenRA, and of course we'll get into should you be playing this remaster or should you be playing OpenRA. We'll get into that a little bit later, because there's a lot of positives for OpenRA that completely blows everything out of the water in a lot of scenarios in this game. So we'll be going into that as we go along. Thankfully, we can constrain our mouse cursor to the window. We can enable the mouse cursor screen edge scrolling, which is great. Enlarge mouse cursor for 4K footage, which you see here. And we can even filter out online profanity and even have online chat be read out to us by a robot. Very nice stuff. Game speed goes from slowest to fastest, and we're at normal here. And map view scroll speed, really nice, and tooltip pop-up speed, instantaneous or not. It's all up to you how you want to do that. Very good. What's not so good is the graphics settings here. The game opens up normally as an exclusive full-screen game. That's if you have both full-screen borderless windowed and windowed mode disabled. You'll be an exclusive full-screen. If you have multiple monitors like myself, if you're running different resolutions, this is going to mess up inevitably all the dang time with this game specifically. If you turn off the game for the night, you turn off your computer, you go to bed, you come up in the morning and you go and play again, it's going to forget what monitor it's currently on. It's going to change the resolution it's currently on. When you're trying to switch it back to the main screen, it's just going to glitch out. You're going to have to turn off the game, turn it back on. It's a mess. It's terrible. This is one of the worst setups for exclusive full screen I've ever seen in a game. It needs to be fixed and patched out. So really, if you're a multi-monitor user, say you're a Twitch streamer, YouTuber, anyone that's actually trying to record the game, highly recommend full screen borderless windowed, because it's just a mess. If you're someone that's just going to be playing the game with one monitor, you're going to be a-okay with exclusive full screen. It's not going to be a problem for you at all. Next up is enable or disable VSync, as well as unit smoothing. Unit smoothing is to get rid of those jitters. You may remember it from when you were playing the game however many years ago. They jitter around as they turn and course correct. This just kind of smooths out those sprites as they're going along. It does make them look kind of like they're gliding a little bit too much, but comparing the two, it does look a little bit better with smoothing, so I leave the smoothing on. And as for performance mouse pointer, I see no difference between enabling or disabling this, so I've left it disabled. Audio, on the other hand, is definitely the gold standard for audio settings in games. There is also a jukebox in the game, but it's only accessible mid-game, when you're in a skirmish mode, when you're in a campaign. That's the only time when you can actually do that, so I'm really surprised there's no jukebox button on the bottom left here. I feel like that would be great, because you can pull in all the new tracks from Frank Klepacki and the Tiberian Sons, which is awesome. And you can even pull in tracks from Red Alert, so you can have a mix and match set of music if you'd like to have Hell March in there, of course. We have mastered volume, game music volume, sound effects, ambient sound effects, UI sound effects, HUD voiceover, and also unit response voice volume, all on sliders, which is great, so you can set all this up to be exactly the way you want. You can go with classic sounds, remastered sounds, and of course those bonus tracks as I've mentioned before. You can even play the audio when it's not in focus, which is great, and voice subtitles, HUD, and movies. This was not available before, so being able to read out exactly what characters are saying is great, especially if the music's not mixed particularly well. So it's going to help us out a lot. Key bindings. Tons of key bindings. Really, really great stuff. There is just an immense list of key bindings. The white ones are the generic ones, so they work for both GDI and NOD. Then we have the GDI-specific hotkeys. So we even go into things like captured NOD structures. This is really great. There's so many hotkeys here. As well as with the NOD structures, they're completely separate, so you don't have to worry about accidentally taking one and removing another. The biggest issue here, and this is where OpenRA has this game beat in every way possible, and it has nothing to do with the actual bindings menu here. Because the binding menus here is great, arguably better than OpenRA. But OpenRA makes it so all of the unit structures, all of the unit icons are already available on the right side of the screen, so they will always permanently be in the exact same spot at all times, which means if you're someone like me that prefers a QWERTY setup for your hotkeys, QWE, ASD, ZXC, Control QWE, etc., you're not going to be able to really fully do that here, especially if your builds change. If you go Orca one time, your hotkey is going to be messed up for next time when you go War Factory. It's just the way of the game. They really need to patch it so you can just have an option, say in general settings, where your command bar on the right side of the screen has all the icons already available right from the start, and you can select each individual one at the exact same spot. Because that would make your life so much easier just to set up these hotkeys and have a better time getting into the game. Instead of having to be like, all right, well now I need a power thing, so I have to hit P on the other side of the freaking keyboard, because, you know, nothing's set up properly. I really feel like whoever worked on the bindings here did a fantastic job, and they were entirely let down by the UI team by bringing back the OG UI from Command & Conquer and not allowing a modern option for command bar. I'm really surprised there's not a modern option for classic command bar, adds in those icons over time, and modern command bar has all the options available right from the start. Just graze them out if you can't currently build them. That would just be so huge if they would add that to the game, and then it would be on equal footing with OpenRA. Next up is mods. This was available before the game actually came out, and for example, I downloaded Rename Light Scout to Humvee, which essentially I think there was legal reasons why they couldn't name these scouts Humvees anymore. But the biggest issue here is if you enable this mod, which is just changing the text on the model, it will lock you out of multiplayer entirely. You just will not be able to play multiplayer. You can't do private matches in that way. You're screwed. So you have to disable these. However, if you do download maps, they don't actually download. You have to still go into the skirmish mode, download them that way, and then they'll be available. Because I've tested it out, and yeah, the maps don't appear at all. It's completely busted and completely broken. So it's nice to see that we have a workshop and all these options here. But the fact that you can't even do private skirmishes is kind of insane to me. Not to mention that if you enable this, you have to completely reload the game. And again, if you're running it in exclusive full screen with multiple monitors, it's just going to glitch out when you restart the game. It's just going to decide to go on a random monitor. It doesn't care. Doesn't matter what's primary monitor or not. It's a really big pain in the ass. And I think they need to work on this a lot more. It definitely feels half-baked here. One thing that's kind of cool is we do have a bonus gallery, and we can actually rewatch some of these cutscenes that you may have seen before of the commander talking. You can even full screen it here. I'm sure the community will do some pretty funny stuff later on, like putting him in the background, or have a background that's completely not related to the scene. But it's really cool to watch all this extra footage. It does appear as though all the footage was filmed on video and not film, and this is where we run into a huge problem later on. And of course, you're not going to expect a game of this budget to be filmed on film. It's going to be filmed on video, and whatever the video footage was probably 480p or 360p at the time. So when they upscale it with any sort of AI upscaling or frame rate upscaling, you're going to notice some huge issues here. Okay, So we're going to go into skirmishes later, but first off, we're going to go into a new game. Because I need to show this off. This was heavily advertised as this game was coming out. That all the cutscenes have been completely touched up, and the AI has changed. The biggest issue is look at any of the moving objects. Look at character eyes, their arms, anything that's moving quickly. And you'll quickly notice that everything is kind of jittering in and out. And there's no way to bring this back to the original 360p video. Which would be so much better, because if we just hit the spacebar, as you'll find out that we can do in the middle of a game, we can switch between the old style and the new style. We can't do that with videos. We don't have the original 360p videos here. And in all honesty, a lot of these full motion videos that were originally 15 FPS just do not hold up at all when they're being AI upscaled like this. Now this footage here looks great. This is a lot better than the original here. If it's something in particular that's like a CG original cutscene, and it's a slow moving cutscene, then it will look perfectly fine. Even if it's high contrast live action here as they're skateboarding down the highway and showing off whatever kind of thing they're having, that looks fine. But there are a lot of distracting cutscenes as we go along here, and this still image even doesn't hold up very well. It looks like his eyes are popping out of his head. They're fidgeting around. Obviously there is some static on screen on purpose here, but it just doesn't look particularly right in some scenarios. You'll notice this also in the Red Alert version of the game as well, where the CG cutscenes do upscale very well. But the actual... Oh, this is actually also CGs. This is one of the ones that do not upscale well. Pay attention to the outline of his silhouette as it's fading in and out of being pixelated and not pixelated, trying to smooth it out. The helicopter is glitching out because it's trying to predict everything in the algorithm. And then all the boys are just skateboarding forward into the helicopter. You know, they're on ice skates because, as we all know, on aircraft carriers, it's just all ice on the top, right? And they all just wear figure skates as they go around into the helicopters. It really doesn't look good at all, and I know a lot of people have been praising it for this AI upscaled stuff. It really doesn't look good. It really does not hold up well in any way or respect. Good. But these more stationary scenes do hold up well, really well. And I just wish that we had the option to hit that spacebar, bring us back to 360p, and then let the player choose if they want these new AI upscaled, weirdly 60 FPS videos, or if they want the original, which typically the original will look just fine. I've seen the original footage. Yes, it's super blurry, but at least it's the original footage, and it's not been doctored and horribly ruined. I think that'll be a lot better. So let's jump into the game itself. After this next cutscene here, you'll notice that as it's moving quickly along the ground, it's kind of skidding and gliding. Obviously these are hovercraft, but it kind of jitters, man. It just doesn't look right. The 15 FPS version looked fine.
Reinforcements have arrived.
So here is the game, and as you can see, we can upscale it to its new visual prowess.
Construction complete. New construction options.
And it does look pretty darn good, but I will say this all comes with a caveat. And what that caveat is that Command & Conquer Remastered on a standard hard drive will stutter like the worst thing you have ever seen in your life. It is so horrifically bad at stuttering if you have it on a hard drive disk, not an SSD. I currently have it installed on SSD because I was getting these stutters, because I was also seeing other people with this exact same issue, where the game would consistently and continuously stutter over and over again. And it was really distracting. It made gameplay nearly impossible.
Building.
But with the art style here, it does look amazing. Just the difference in quality between going from the original art style to the new art style. And although the original art style definitely holds up very well, it definitely dehumanizes everything in the game too, which I really liked, because these are just tiny pixelized men that you're sending to their death as they go against the opponents. But you're just like, you know, just mindlessly send them off to war and all that stuff. And it felt good, man, because you're like, yeah, I'm a big commander. I'm a good dude. And I love that shit, man. I love that shit as I attack my microphone. That's why I love StarCraft and all that shit. And then the new models also carry over that same, like, blank face, blank visuals, just a little bit more detail on the models. I think it looks perfect. The Humvees especially, like, oh my god, they look great. And once we see, like, the Abrams tanks, dude, this is a fantastic, a wonderful addition to the Command & Conquer series. Arguably one of the best looking Command & Conquer games of all time. And I'm not even saying that to try and get a quote. I'm just saying that's exactly what it feels like for me. I think it looks a lot better than, say, even Command & Conquer 3. Just because I like this art style. I like this more rigid, more realistic looking art style, and I think it works great.
Accomplished.
I just wish that the cutscenes we could switch between the original and the new. I think that's just such a small thing to ask for, and also give us the ability, like in OpenRA, to switch between having the current command bar as it is in the OG version of Command & Conquer and a newer modern command bar that has all the options available right from the start, where they don't get jumbled up if you decide to do a different build order, because that's just ridiculous to me. I think that's just, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, and it completely excludes players that want to have a more simplistic hotkey setup, like myself. Yeah, man, that just looks weird with all the squares going up, and then they just are all glitching out into each other as the algorithm's like, I don't know what I'm doing. This looks weirdly, too. Weird, like it's still 15 FPS, but it's like, I don't know. It's just a weird smoothness to it that doesn't seem right. So this menu here has also been updated, which is really nice. I love the new look, and all the text, of course, is also 4K, so that always looks really, really nice and very, very smooth. You can click on specific missions now. This was not available in OpenRA. If you played the DOSBox version of the game, though, of course, you could still do all of this stuff, or if you played the PS1 version, you'd be good to go. Let's watch one more cutscene, and I'll be quiet for it.
Good job with the beachhead, Commander. It's time to bring you up to speed on Nod so you know what you're dealing with. This is Kane, the self-appointed leader of the Brotherhood of Nod. Stand by, I'll link us up.
Condition critical. Know why Nod had this beach bottled up? They're protecting a big Tiberian refinery that intelligence somehow missed. We need backup now. Nod troops are pouring out of their base, strangling our foothold. We gotta knock out that refinery, eliminate all Nod forces before we lose our position. I don't know how long we can hold out.
Damn. You heard the man. What are you waiting for?
Our base is under attack.
Okay, let me show you the jukebox real quick before we move on into skirmishes. So, this is awesome. We can actually make our own custom playlist. As you can see, the available tracks is 203. We're currently using 111 of 203. And we have all these to choose from. It's great. A lot of remasters, a lot of remakes of all the songs. It's awesome. 6 hours, over 6 hours of freaking music. And we just add it all over to the custom playlist and play it whenever we want. We can even grab the classic tracks. That's why it's 203. It's really 111. But if we enable the classic tracks, then we'll get them all up and running in there. And then you can even use those. Although I do prefer the high fidelity, but if you want the original, which was also originally available on, I think, Spotify, but that's where I listen to the music normally. Hell, if I'm playing other RTS games, I'll listen to the Frank Klepacki soundtrack because it's freaking awesome. It's a great remaster of all the music, and the music in the game is top-notch. It's peak perfect. They could not have done a better job with the remaster of the music. It's just too awesome. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Just on the music alone, man.
Battle control terminated.
But let us go into Skirmishing Online. So here's the skirmish mode here, and this is going to be offline exclusive. So we go from open slot, easy, medium, hard AI. You can't close the slots here. Now be careful. If you click on host game, it's going to load lobbies, and now this is actually just an open lobby for other people to join. And that's how you can see we can now close the slot entirely and play normally here. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but yeah, if you're trying to get your friends in here, you're gonna have the ship tab and get them in the match as soon as possible, because the only way to make your own matches here is by doing this. You can't seem to password protect it, as far as I can tell, because custom here is for user maps. And this is how you get the maps in the game. You don't go through the Steam Workshop, even though this is technically through the Steam Workshop, because when you download it, Steam will light up and be like, I'm downloading stuff. And then you get that into the game, and then you play it. Which is cool, but it's still weird that I can't seem to download it on the Steam Workshop and then just have it be here. I've had that happen multiple times. I've tried 3 or 4 different maps. None of them appear here. You have to specifically click on the map, click on download, hit back, and then there you go. Now it's in there. Very strange. Very strange. Your rule settings here are bases on, destroy all structures, or destroy structures in general. I think this skips out on defensive structures and Tiberian refineries. Or not refineries, but rather the storage devices. Silos, that's the word. Then we have destroy all, which is everything. Bases off, if you don't want an MCV, capture the flag, and mobile headquarters, which is kind of... I almost want to say that, like, mobile headquarters is kind of like in Age of Empires. You know, when you're doing Nomad or something like that. It kind of reminds me of that. Maybe that's more bases off than that, but yeah. Definitely is weird, for sure. And then another thing that's a bit questionable is that maps can only be 4 players. Even if the map has way more than that, right? If we go to, like, Pitfall here, for example, we still are only limited to 4 players, even though clearly there's way more than just 4 players available, or player spawning points anyway, on the map. It's a bit odd. I'm surprised you can't do 8 players. 8-player free-for-all would be a ton of fun. That's one of the best things you can do in these types of games, which is super great. And oddly enough, we're just limited to 4 players. I'm not sure why. There's even an option to have up to 6 different colors, which is also questionable. So we can't even do 6 players, we can only do 4 players. And we have 6 different colors to choose from. Why? I don't know. Maybe the graphics are too strong. Or their servers are going to be overloaded with too many troops going on screen at any given time. Another thing is you can obviously choose game speed, starting units, tech level, credits, as well as crates, redeployable MCVs, super weapons, and even spawn Visceroids. Just have them walk around and murder everyone before you even get to your opponent. It could happen, dude. There's also a quick match here, and as you can see, there's a leaderboard, which marks just how many points you currently have. Essentially, I think everyone starts at 1,000 points. Your standard MMR stuff, really, these days. Similar to Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. You win a match, it goes up. You lose a match, it goes down. And it matches you to people that are very close to that pointage. GDI, nod, random. And again, this is the skirmish mode. And again, you just choose where you want them to go and spawn on the map. Kind of basic. I wish there was a bit more to this. They could really learn a lot from Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition or even StarCraft Remastered. I hope they do look into that. I heard there was a community of people that was working with the developers 24/7 at all times, and apparently they never said anything about skirmish in this game, because clearly this is really undercooked in every way possible. It's very raw, as they say. OpenRA has this beat, hands down. And yeah, it's so obvious that OpenRA just blows this game out of the water in terms of its hotkeys, its menus, and its skirmish mode. So if you're looking for skirmish mode, if you're looking for pro matches, stick with OpenRA. Well, let's go into a replay observer mode, because I'm sure people are interested in checking this stuff out. Now, weirdly enough, the game just tosses replays in here. And I think this is just recent games. So if we go over to the Observe tab for a moment, these are games pending. They're about to start. Some of them are also in progress. And I think once these games complete, they get thrown on over into this tab here. So you'll just get random replays of other players. You're not getting your own replays. If you are, I don't know where they are. I never know where my own replays are. But essentially, this is it. Here's a 2v2 going on right now. Let's go check it out, just so I can kind of show it off as it goes on here. So we have 4 players in total. Looks like we have a nod in the top right corner. We have GDI in top left, GDI in bottom left, and another nod player in the bottom right. Very cool stuff. The minigunner. As I believe nod is the ones that start with the light tanks. Already setting off a scout over to the top left here. And if you're wondering, like, where is all the menus? Where is everything going on? This is really it. This is all you get to see. You don't see who's currently constructing what. You can't switch in between new and old visuals. You're stuck with the remaster no matter what. So if you ever wanted to use this as an example to show off everything, you can't. And not only that, even still on the SSD, in this observer mode, I'm still getting a lot of stutters. Well, not a lot, but every now and again you're going to notice a stutter. There was one earlier. So really all we get is how much money each player has. We can specifically select a player and see what they're looking at.
Moving out.
and see what he's currently selecting, and even get his unit barks as we're clicked on him, and how much of the map he's explored, which is pretty cool. I do like that stuff. You can see how many enemies they've killed and how many structures they've destroyed. But you don't get to see anything like how many units do they have on their team. I don't know. How much structures do they have built? I don't know. What's their power at? I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. The game does a very poor job in this observer mode explaining exactly where the players are. Sure, you can see how much money they currently have left, which is kind of nice to gauge, at least after the beginning of the game, because at the beginning of the game you get 10,000 credits that you can just start spending. But really, it's like, it doesn't do a particularly great job at allowing a caster to jump into this game and start understanding just exactly what's going on. Sure, we get all the conflict, all the combat, and obviously we can also go into options here and change around the health bars to damaged. So at least now we have some understanding of how much damage is going out on the units. That's really about it. And all we have to go on now is what they're currently making, constructing, and all that good stuff. It's really unfortunate. I really wish that this observer mode was a little bit better. I was really hoping that they had more people in the community talking about observer mode, talking about UI, key bindings, how everything's set up, and make this the remaster that it deserved to be. Because so far, there's only 2 things that I really love about this game. Well, okay, 3 things. It does run on modern hardware, and that's a huge thing. OpenRA does that too. On OpenGL 3, it does as well. But at least this is allowing players to purchase the game legally and play it. That's a huge thing. Frank Klepacki being back and remaking and remastering all the music, that's huge. That's some of the best sounding music in RTS history. Not too many games can be like that and have that great of a soundtrack. Really, the only games that come to mind is StarCraft, is Dawn of War, and this game as well that just have fantastic soundtracks. Of course, there's other games out there too that have really great soundtracks, but these 3 are the gems, in my opinion, that stick out to me. And, yeah, another thing is the visuals. The visuals are really beautiful. The fact that we can zoom in, the fact that we can play in 4K, the models look really good, they're smooth, they move around very smooth, and you can also turn that off if you don't like it. That's great, but I think that they need to fix the command bar, or at least give us the option to have better keybinds with that command bar, so we can make it more of that QWERTY style, because again, a lot of people use that QWERTY style, myself included, and then also make it have an option for those cutscenes, and then I think this would be the ultimate version of Command & Conquer, and I don't think that's a huge thing to ask, to give us those 360 videos back, and to give us those options on that command bar. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's been everything, is my opinion on Command & Conquer Tiberian Dawn, Red Alert, Covert Ops, Counter-Strike, The Aftermath. It's getting there, but again, you're going to run into stutters if you install this on your hard drive disk, get an SSD, or just avoid it until they fix it. Because, you know, asking your consumer to go buy an SSD just to play your game is ridiculous. And wait to see if they maybe update some of the hotkey choices. If you don't mind the hotkeys so much, then that's perfectly fine. You'll probably just have no problem with the game going on into it. But it's definitely a huge issue for me. And I wish that command bar was just more consistent, much like an OpenRA. Otherwise, go check out OpenRA, because that is a very great way to play through Command & Conquer, even though you don't get these beautiful visuals. Gameplay-wise, you're going to have a much better time. My name's Hackman101, and I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.